We're just arriving at Horton Plains at 2,000 meters above sea level. And we see along the watercourse this bamboo, which is probably endemic to Horton Plains. So it is a bamboo growing really like a rheophytic species in the very strong water current and also on the banks of this small river. And actually this bamboo with very erect culms actually has all the leaves upward turn, almost vertical. This is probably because of the so strong sunlight, because we are at more than 2,000 meters above sea level. So now it's cloudy, but it's not always like this. So due to the very strong sunlight, probably the vertical leaves are a good adaptation to avoid the impact of UV light on too strong light. So it is perfectly growing as a clump bamboo, and we can only see it growing inside the water or on the margins of the water. And we see also some strange green things on the rocks in the fast-flowing river. I don't know, maybe it's algae, maybe it's mosses, maybe it can be an utricularia, maybe it can be also Podostemonaceae. Impossible to know because I cannot reach it. But we see all the shrubs are rhododendron. Unfortunately, it's not the flowering season, but probably it's incredibly beautiful, probably totally red. It's probably Rhododendron arboreum, which is the red-colored flowered. Rhododendron, so of course now is not the flowering season, but we see all the terminal inflorescence protected by all the scales. So probably it will be flowering during the dry season. This rhododendron, I think, is the same as in southern India. So one of the multiple form of varieties of Rhododendron arboreum. But I have to say, maybe it could be another one. But this one has crinkled leaves. We see the undulate leaves, very thick and very shiny. So shiny probably because of reflecting the excess of UV light. I am here among all these clumps of this bamboo, this so erect bamboo. Here is a marshy area with water moving very fast. I cannot go here because, of course, here is another poacée, another grass, more usual grass, but very dense tufts, so difficult to go inside. And this bamboo, actually, it seems it's Arundinaria densifolia. Densifolia we can understand because the leaves are so densely packed along the stems. So maybe the name has changed now because, of course, Arundinaria has been cut in many other genera. But anyway, it is maybe endemic of this area or probably a very, very narrow area of distribution. But this one of the Rhododendron arboreum are really the two plants which are the most impressive in this area. Here in this small pond in this savanna, we see white spikes emerging from the water. And when I look at these spikes, I see it's clearly spikes of an Aponogeton. On Aponogeton, we know that here is only one species, which is Aponogeton jacobseni. Jacobsen is a Dutch man who did work a lot on Cryptocoraline, Lagenandra, and Aponogeton, and is still alive and working. And Niels Jacobsen did discover here in Horton Plains this Aponogeton in the 1980s, and it has been named after him. It is endemic of this area of Horton Plains in very few patches of water. It is really a narrow endemic of altitude, high altitude swamps, totally exposed to full sunlight. This small rosetted plant actually looks really like a plantain, so something common in all the areas of temperate and altitude area in tropics, but we look more closely at the leaves, which have the venation acrodromus with the beautiful vines in direction of the tip of the leaves. And actually I know there is an Hedyotis, so another member of this genus of Rubiaceae, which is totally compressed like this. It's a Hedyotis plantaginea. The name is a good name, of course, and we see all the old leaves under. It creates this group of rosettes. So really a very, very different type of Hedyotis than the other ones, and very exceptional, this one. So we clearly see here the leaves with the beautiful venation, all the vines in the direction of the tip of the leaf. In the heart we see the water is accumulating inside, in the middle of the rosette, always growing, and we see after the old leaves decaying and protecting the base of the short stem of this Hedyotis plantaginifolia or plantaginea. Here we see in this open area a small Melastomataceae with 4 petals, so most probably this is a small creeping Osbeckia, and because Osbeckia is a genus very well diversified in higher altitudes, often 4 petals, but sometimes also 5 petals. Another Melastomataceae. This one has 5 petals. It's also herbaceous, but a little bit higher. And the stamens are very erect. Probably it is another species of Osbeckia. So this half shrubby species with very beautifully vined leaves, acrodromus vine, going, so it means the direction of the vines is in the direction of the top of the leaf, of the apex of the leaf, and so opposite leaves, so it is obviously still a member of the genus Hedyotis in the Rubiaceae. So here in this forest we see all the trees, quite small trees, 5 meters, 7 meters tall. Probably many species. I recognize easily some Ericaceae. Ericaceae we did see already the rhododendron, but probably many other genera. We see other bamboos. We see, for instance, here a reclining bamboo, totally different forest bamboo, so more or less climbing. And it's a real botanical garden because side by side we see this incredibly beautiful thing, which is obviously an Arizema. So it has only 1 leaf. The leaf we see is totally compound. It's a kind of palmate leaf, a very elegant distribution of the leaflets, and the so incredible inflorescence. So we see the spot with the lines, the dark green, bronze, we don't know, separated by white zone, totally reclining and protecting the spadix, which is under. It's really like a cobra, and it is called, common name is cobra lily for this Arizema. And if I remove just a little bit the top of the spat, we see clearly the spadix because it's an Araceae. So all the flowers actually are tiny, tiny things along the spadix, which is going down till here. So the first part we don't see here is the female part with female flowers, then male flowers here with stamens, and then usually the apical part is a sterile part, sometimes emitting some heat, which is attractive for insects. It is really so strange. Every time I see an Arizema, I'm so happy. This is here, not so nice. No, it's elegant, it's very elegant, it's a rubus, but I suspect it to be an invasive species. Not sure, because the leaves are a little bit crinkled like this. So I'll check. I don't know if it's the invasive Rubus mollucanus or another species more local. Here I'm surprised. It is a family of the Solomon seal. Obviously, this group, it is branched, so it's the Convalariaceae. So I'm surprised because I didn't know they were in the north of India, on the mountain of India, but I did not know that they could go down so southerly here to Sri Lanka. It is probably the genus Disporum. Here is a Jungloraceae. Yes, when we see this color of leaves, really like a little bit like avocado, and also the vines which are running upward like this, so typical of the Lauraceae. Here, flower is tiny, but the plant is quite high. It is obviously an impatiens, and actually the flower is small, but when we look closely, we see that it is very, very elegant with a dark purple spot in the middle of the two lateral petals at the top. And the spore, actually, oh yes, we see the spore, characteristic of most impatiens, just under the flower. Here, it's a spore linked to one of the petals. And so everything of an impatiens is here. So all this in less than 1 square meter. It seems it has been really planted for us. And I see a member of the Lamiaceae. We see clearly the squared angles of the stem. So it is probably another Plectranthus, but now most Plectranthus are in the genus Coleus, but no problem at all. We know about what we are speaking, and we see the flower, the blue flower with a shape which is totally curved like a pipe, like this, and the flower buds protected by the bracts and sepals. And yes, and when I look upward, I see also an orchid which is flowering. It has yellow long inflorescence, and it is epiphytic on this tree among the mosses. Oh, yes, my goodness, yes, it's a piper. Because I see the infructescence, we see the spike with green berries, but it's surprising because it's climbing on the inflorescence appears on a very small lateral stem. Oh yes, we see many with inflorescence on small stems. So it is a climbing piper. We know there are many climbing piper species in India, in South India, and also in Sri Lanka, but at this altitude, more than 2,000 meters, it's always surprising for me to see pipers, but I know that actually piper in South India and Sri Lanka lack the high altitude. So I like the shape of these leaves. It's a climbing plant with a very beautiful deltoid leaf. I think really it is a member of the Menispermaceae family. So now I stop, I move a little bit more, but still many other interesting plants. So here we see this other bamboo. It is obviously a climbing species. We see it climbing in the trees with after the stems totally decumbent on the small trees. We listen many birds around us also, probably. It's a group of birds totally foraging together in the forest. These rusty velvety leaves probably belong to a member of the Myristicaceae, because I see the leaves. It seems to have stems not really verticillate, but it's quite characteristic on this color of the leaves with the hairs, which have a very beautiful color, especially in the very young developing phase, and very elegant also with the raindrops. And even when we look at still younger part, we see really it's totally coppery colored and it's very luminous. So it's very elegant. Probably it becomes a big tree. This shrubby plant between herbaceous and shrubby. Actually has opposite velvety leaves, and we see the beautiful inflorescence which are bending downward with green bracts and yellow flowers. And oh yes, I see clearly the flowers. So the bract, the greenish yellow bract and the bright yellow flowers with opposite leaves. Yes, it's a member of Acanthaceae. Very beautiful tubular flower with the lobes just open and reclining. It is really only half shrubby with these thick nodes characteristic of the Acanthaceae. So it is happy here, a little bit climbing, reclining plant. At the base of this trunk, we see this strange structure, which is obviously a lichen. So, association between an alga and a fungus, a mushroom, and we see the color is blackish, dark brown, and oh yes, and very clear, oh, totally silvery on the lower side. Incredible. So strange. Here is a tall and big-leaved Hedyotis, which has a trunk. We see the trunk is not very thick, but it produces really a trunk. We see the last stems with the old inflorescences. On this Hedyotis is named Hedyotis arborescens. Of course, it's a good name because many Hedyotis are very small. We have even seen the rosetted one, which is exactly like a plantain. So it's totally different from this one, but we see the venation, which is characteristic of these Hedyotis. So on this Hedyotis arborescens, we see clearly the huge stipules, and it's interesting because these stipules are totally translucent and protecting all the following part of the shoot. And when we turn like this, we see actually that at the beginning the stipules are totally covering all the internode and they are removing just after. So it's really a very good protection for the apex, especially in this case of Hedyotis, which has very big leaves, so probably they can be eaten by many people. So it's probably very useful to have this very efficient protection by the big stipules. And oh yes, and somebody else here. Wow, we see the vines, which obviously are the vines of the Melastomataceae, and when we see the inflorescence, it is of course a member of the genus Medinilla. There are not many Medinilla here in Sri Lanka, but some species. It is a shrubby species which is a little bit similar to species we can see in Asia. The flower here, which is totally hanging down, which is a cup-like and even utriculate. We see the base, which is much thicker, dark pink, and we see the stamens emerging. So it's very... No, I did not see Medinilla with this type of flower before, but obviously it is a Medinilla. Oh, here the red, bright red structure are the fruits, and finally the peduncle becomes red when the fruit is maturing, and also all the base, the hypanthium of the flower becomes shiny and thick and bright red, and also the remaining part of the sepals, so everything becomes totally bright red on this trend because it's very, very similar to the flowers on the fruits of Ericaceae. Here in altitude where there are so many Ericaceae, and it's very interesting to see that the Melastomataceae, this Medinilla, is really similar, almost we could say almost mimicking the fruits and the flowers of the Ericaceae, like Golteria, Vaccinium, all this type of Ericaceae, which are probably many here. But so we are ready to check the leaves to see with the opposite leaves with these vines. It's not an Ericacea, but a Melastome or the Medinilla. When I did see this plant, I did not know if it was due to the strap-shaped long leaves, if it could be a poacea, so a grass, or a kind of carex, sedges, or an Ophiopogon. But I did think no Ophiopogon so southerly, so close to Ecuador, but no, it is an Ophiopogon. Obviously, when we see the inflorescence, it is an Ophiopogon. It has a dark green leaves, and when we see the undersurface with which is grayish with the lines, we see it is an Ophiopogon. But I'm surprised to see Ophiopogon here in Ceylon Island. So, but here, when I look just a little bit on the left, I see obviously Ophiopogon here. We see the young leaves characteristic, but here, this actually is different. Probably a sedge, a carex, when I touch the leaf, is different. And when we look to the lower side of the leaf, we see it's not at all Ophiopogon-like. It has a long vine in the middle, which is really impressed. When I touch its rugose, so we see actually they are both probably carex or another sedge and Ophiopogon growing side by side. So the mistake is really legitimate because actually both are growing. One more time, similar plants are growing together. It's a very strange this to see because they occupy the habitat in the same way. So no concurrence, because in forest understories there is not enough light to have concurrence, but side by side they occupy in the same way. They catch the light in the same way, side by side. So it's always very surprising to see this not at all competitive way of life, and probably not helping each other, but a respect, total respect between the two individuals belonging to two different, totally different families. Here I see the very long stem of the inflorescence, a very long peduncle, and when I see at the apex the structure, it is a Cyperaceae, sedge family, and probably the genus Carex, but very, very elegant fishing, like a fishing line, just emerging from the basal leaves of the Carex. Here we see a beautiful tall individual of Ediotis arborescens. We see it's quite tall because it's about 3 meters tall. But what is especially beautiful is the young stems emerging from the base of the trunk. And we can see also that the bark of the trunk of this Ediotis is very beautifully designed. We see all the crevices, and of course the design of the vines of the leaves. It's one of the most beautiful we can see, I think, in plants. It's absolutely perfect. Distribution also of the stems side by side is perfect. All of them collect the light, no problem of covering the leaves of the other ones. And we see the old inflorescence, not very sexy at this stage because it's old inflorescence, but it's actually interesting, probably same as most Ediotis. It has small flowers, but now the corolla has fallen. But the vegetative part of this Ediotis arborescens is absolutely perfect. So here also, just a side to the Ediotis arborescens, which is a beautiful light purple flower, the bell flowers of another species of Strobilanthes, but the shape of the flower is very interesting because the tube is curved upward and it's very elegant in this understory. Suddenly we see this bright light color. We see the flowers of this Strobilanthes, and it's very interesting to see the corolla just opening, facing us, and we see also that from close view that the axis of the inflorescence is by itself very, very interesting because it is dark pink, almost carmine, purple, and we see it is covered by tiny hairs. The tiny hairs are totally dark purple, so the dark purple hairs and the bright pink axis of the inflorescence, and after all the purple also parts of the base of the flower, I mean all the calyx part and the corolla, everything is really perfectly elegant. I was much intrigued by these red things. When I approach, I see its red things are flowers. It looks a little bit like flowers of Utricularia or something like that, but actually, when we look at the leaves, we clearly see it is an orchid. We see the thick leaves indented at the apex, characteristic of an orchid. I don't know, of course, which genus. We see the roots also, the white roots covered by the famous velamen, and so we see these so beautiful flowers on the brown leaves of this small orchid. This erect herbaceous plant, half shrubby, actually with these bright white flowers and the small opposite leaves with vines which are very deeply impressed. And when I see also the flower bud with the sepals recurving like a bell like this here, immediately I think about Gentianacea, and more precisely I really think it's the genus Hexacom. I know that in Sri Lanka there are some Hexacom species, and it's a genus we can find in Asia, but also in East Africa especially. And here it is obviously an endemic species from here. Very, very elegant because the flowers are totally out of the foliage, so it is absolutely perfect. This is really a gorgeous plant, a quite small plant, but incredibly beautiful because the white is a real white. It's not whitish, it's pure white, probably reflecting UV light at night. So we see the opposite leaves with the impressed vines, very shiny leaves, and when I look at this flower bud is bending down, and we see the sepals, the crested sepals just around the flower, which are very characteristic actually of the hexacomb in the Gentianacea. And after, when the flower is opening, it moves upward, so it opens horizontally or upward, but the bud is always drooping down. And I don't see the fruits. Yes, we see the fruits forming here also, on again a little bit bending down during the maturation of the fruit. I think that this bright red young leaf as a flush totally appearing at the same time. I think actually probably it's leaves of an Ericacea, maybe a Golteria or something, or Vaccinium or something like that, but probably this shrub or small tree is a member of Ericacea. We know that also red leaves like this we can see in many Myrtaceae also, and especially in Eugenia and Syzygium in mountain, but here it is most probably with alternate leaves and Ericacea. These violin-shaped leaves of this plant, totally amplexical, or plexical means that the base of the leaf is embracing the stem and turning around, is most probably a member of the Asteraceae, the daisy family. I say most probably because I see nothing looking like flowers, but the vegetative parts are so elegant. Oh, and when I look at, wow, the lower side, the adaxial side of the leaf, wow, with the color, this purple is totally terrific. It's incredibly beautiful. So the shape, everything is beautiful in this plant. Probably it remains a small plant, climbing a little bit. It's maybe a Ginura, maybe it's a genus Ginura in the Asteraceae, but it's probably this group. Anyway, so beautiful. So when I did suggest that this plant with violin-shaped leaves could be a member of Asteraceae, I was right, because here we see at the end of the stem the two capitulate inflorescence looking like two flowers, a little bit like a dianthus flower, but actually not at all. Each of the ligulate flower actually is white in the lower part, and it ends in a totally comb-like structure which is totally pink. This is what looks a little bit like dianthus flowers, but not at all. This is really a daisy family, Asteraceae, but it's very, very elegant when we look in detail. A small shrubby member of Asteraceae. I don't know, maybe something, a group of bidens or something like that. I say that because I see the opposite leaves, which are a little bit dentate or even lobed. So probably it's this group, but anyway, it's very cute. So here on this slope, in open area, we see this shrub with bark. It's a quite big shrub. And when we see the flowers, immediately we think to a member of Melastomataceae. I'm very careful. The flower, color flower, wow, yes, it's incredibly bright, so bright, Indian pinks. It's really the Indian pink color. We are just a little bit southward, and what is incredible is the difference of size between the flower, which is a huge flower, and the leaves, which are tiny, tiny leaves, only about 3 millimeters long by 2 millimeters, and the huge flowers. So it's the contrast is incredible. And when I look, oh yes, when we look at the fruits, fruits are strange structure, dry, totally dry structure, and we see all the periphery actually is a dentate part of the calyx, and it is a dry fruit, so this is characteristic of the genus Osbeckia. There are many species of Osbeckia, both very small herbaceous species and many are shrubby species. But what is really fantastic is the shape, global shape of the plant and the color of the flowers, the size of the leaves, the shape of the fruit, which is also by itself very strange and like a star. Okay. What is this? Yes, opposite leaves, which are pinnate with one terminal leaflet, and the young red leaves and stipules. Yes, it is a Cunoniaceae. Cunoniaceae we know very well in southern hemisphere. For instance, in New Caledonia there are so many species of Cunoniaceae, but of course there are also some in northern hemisphere, but I did not know there were Cunoniaceae in Sri Lanka. The color on the dentate leaves, everything is characteristic. It's a, yes, but actually it is this big tree. Leaf shape is changing after, but it becomes more opposite. But yes, it is sprouting from the trunk here. So it is still more surprised to see so huge size. Yes, and we see the opposite leaves, yes, no doubt at all. I don't know if it's a Weinmannia or another genus, but it is a Cunoniaceae, a big one. So it's not surprising because Cunoniaceae like to be in quite high altitude, fresh air. So it is in this mossy forest, because here we are in the mossy forest of Horton's Plain. So this shrub with opposite leaves very tightly packed. Long leaves, it's a member of the genus Hypericum. We see clearly the flowers open here. Maybe also this one is easier to observe. We see the bright yellow flower. Most Hypericum actually have yellow flower like this. We see the characteristic numerous stamen of these Clusiaceae hypericaceae. The tiny species of a Biophytum. It's on the very humid vertical part of this rock, and this one, maybe because it is more exposed to the light compared to the one we had seen before in the forest, it has totally red midrib because it's a compound leaf. It looks like a fern, but it's not a fern, it's Angiosperm, Oxalidaceae, Biophytum. And we see clearly the center, which is red, and also the midrib, which is red. In this old inflorescence, infructescence of Etlingera, we clearly see the bracts, peripheral bracts, which are sterile, and all the bracts in the middle, which are actually creating kind of small axes with secondary bracts all along. We see clearly all these secondary bracts, but what is more surprising is that now the fruits are developing, but there are still new flowers. We see this one which has a new flower here, while the fruits are, I'll try to see if I can take one of these bracts, so probably there are fruits. No, I don't see. Not ripe probably, but and here it's funny, because here in this old inflorescence we see the seeds germinating. We see the baby plant germinating inside the old infructescence. So obviously the fruits are developed because the seeds are germinating. Not a big future, maybe, except if the infructescence is falling down, so maybe the young plants can be growing. So on this mossy trunk, we see a population of Peperomia. Actually, we see it has very succulent, quite small leaves, erect stem, but what is a little bit surprising is the size of the spadix of the inflorescence compared to the size of the plant, especially of the leaf, because the spadix is really quite big, and we see also the tiny dark green, brown, almost a black. It's not the seeds because it's at the periphery, it is the aken, which are usually sticky, and we see clearly the sticky aken, which are thus transportation is a dispersal often by animals on the feathers of the birds, for instance, or the legs of the birds, or some mammals. So we see it is clearly sticky. I put them here, so they will germinate again here. Ah oui, c'est impressionnant de près. On voit ce qui est sticky. In fact, the sticky akens emerging from the axis of the spadix actually are sticky because we see at the periphery, at the base of each aken, in the periphery, small glands, and probably these are hairs which become glandular and sticky, mucilaginous glands, which allow the aken to be detached and sticky. I try to touch it just to see if akens are fixing. Yes, they are wrapped because they are fixed on my fingers, so sticky due to these kind of glands at the base of the aken. Now it's raining in Hortons Plain, but it's usual. Now it's more than 3 p.m, so it's very usual. Almost every day it's like this. It's why we have this mossy forest and so many ferns. And about ferns, this fern is a very beautiful undulate margin on the midrib, which is light green, yellow, and it has some iridescent blue color. We see that actually the front is somewhat blue iridescent. According to the shape and the texture of the front, the color, it seems it could be an Elaphoglossum. So this small tree, actually with opposite leaves which are a little bit bulate, and most of all these white flowers with a lot of stamens, is obviously a member of the Myrtaceae, and we know that Myrtaceae are very characteristic of the trees in this forest in the tropical mountains. And so I don't know if it's an Eugenia or Syzygium or another genus, because of course there are other genera in this family Myrtaceae. So I try to go here in the water. I hope it's shallow water because I want to be sure that this Aponogeton is Aponogeton jacobsenii. So I'm a little bit careful, of course. I see the spikes. Ah oui, ça s'enfonce un peu. Not so easy at all. Ah, attends, là je vois une feuille. Oh yes, I see the leaves. No doubt at all. Oh yes, I cut just one leaf. And this green leaf is the leaf of Aponogeton jacobsenii. No doubt at all. Wow, so endemic of this Horton Plains area. So here we see clearly the white spikes. Hopefully I see a young one which has been cut by animals probably. And we see actually all the flowers and even the bracts. Aponogeton is mostly from Madagascar, some species in Africa, and some species in Asia, especially in Sri Lanka. Aponogeton crispus in Sri Lanka, Aponogeton jacobsenii. So after I can send some photo to Niels Jacobsen, he will see again his Aponogeton. This tree with the spatulate leaves, very thick leaves, is common in this area of Horton Plains and also just around. And it is very characteristic with the shape of the leaves, with the color also. And actually it is a member of the Lauraceae. It is an Actinodaphne, it's a genus we can see also in southern India and in other places of Asia, but it is very, very characteristic, and usually it has branches more or less verticillate, appearing many at the same node, and it is one of the important elements of this forest, mountain forest, and we see the vines of the leaves, which are very prominent, impressed on the lower surface, and red, very beautiful, but always this shape. Both edges of the leaves are curved inward, so probably because the leaves are oriented like this, the rain is falling on each side. And we see that the young leaves are covered with hairs. It's totally coppery colored hairs, and it reflects the light, so probably protecting when the leaves are young. Since they are quite big, probably these hairs are protecting from the strong UV light when they are young, so probably reflecting the light, and also the dense felt of hairs protect the surface of the leaf. So it is probably the tree with the largest leaves here in this forest. I see another one on this side, and we see from far that the leaves remain very shiny when they are big, so probably always reflecting perfectly the light during the heavy sun periods. We are just at the limit between this grassland in Horton Plains and the forest at 2,000, about 200 meters above sea level. And in the totally waterlogged areas, or when there is a small stream, it is the bamboo, the endemic small bamboo of Horton Plains. But here, when the soil is a little bit higher and not totally overwet, there is this other grass. On this grass we see, which has quite wide leaves, and we see all the inflorescence which emerge very high above the foliage. So all of these kind of clumps are very efficient in retaining some soil in the middle, and also between each clump there are some corridors where water can be flowing, or animals can also just go between the clumps and jump between some others. So it's a really habitat, a specific habitat for many animals, due to the fact that each clump is separate from each other. So we see actually that here in Horton Plains, life is possible everywhere. In the forest, we see very big old trees here, and also in the savanna. So this patchwork of forest and savanna, which is totally wet or a little bit higher and more dry, so means that there are many different habitats. It's why it's so rich also concerning animals in Horton Plains. But first of all, very rich in the diversity of the plant species. We clearly see the very tall inflorescence of this grass, and also we see the leaves which are quite rigid, pointed and quite wide, and we see clearly all the vines all along the leaf, and actually the disposition, the distribution of the leaves is very elegant, and it keeps all the old leaves are just around. So of course, all these falling old leaves are a habitat for many animals. So on the color, it's a very bright green color. These are a little bit golden, so really it's a very beautiful contrast between the inflorescence on the leaves and also compared to all the other things around. Here you see the leaves with the vines. Very thick leaves, the midrib, which is prominent. And here, the inflorescence, very tall inflorescence. It's old inflorescence. There were seeds, and even the seeds have been already released. So probably it was also very beautiful when a few months ago, when it was a young inflorescence. But even like this dry, it's very beautiful. All the old leaves, which are turning brown, golden brown. So the contrast with the green leaves is absolutely perfect. Even when they die, they are still beautiful. Here we see clearly the mixed color of the golden of the old leaves, still erect, and the young leaves totally green. I'm among this grass, the clumps. It's very tall clumps, actually. It's, in fact, quite difficult to move between because we never know if there is water or no. No, here is not water, but we see clearly the separation between all these clumps of this grass, and also here we see the trees. These very old trees. I don't know if it's maybe it's an Ericacea. It could be many different groups, many different families. It could be Myrtaceae, but the leaves are a little bit too small. It could be Teaceae also, and maybe Vaccinium or something like that. But it's very big trees, big trunks, very old. So very difficult to estimate the real age of these trees because we know that in this climate, the trees are growing very slowly. Each year, probably only 2 centimeters of growth or something like that, with only 5 to 10 leaves, but the leaves are so small, so probably the growth at the periphery of the crown is only something like 1, 2, or 3 centimeters maximum. So maybe these trees are maybe much more than 100 years old, maybe much more. So from here, we see also the characteristic crownlet shyness, because we see that all these crownlets are separate from each other. So actually, it's very interesting to see the transition between the forest and the grassland. Here we see clearly that this tree with tiny leaves is actually very, very old, and we see the diameter of the trunk and even the diameter of the main branches finishing in very small crownlets. When I see this tree totally covered by white flowers, I see that the flowers are hanging down like some bells. So I did think, obviously it is a member of the Ericacea, Gaultheria or something like that. But when I approach, actually I see that it's not at all bells of the corolla, which is only in one part. It is actually the petals which are totally fringed at the apex of the petals. So it is actually an Elaeocarpus. So the genus Elaeocarpus is well represented in forest, in mountains. Actually, when we approach, we see clearly that it's not bell-shaped, it's not a tubular corolla, but it's actually many petals which are totally fringed at the top. So it is characteristic of the genus Elaeocarpus, and we know that actually Elaeocarpus are very well represented in tropical mountains, especially in Asia, of course, on Pacific Islands. But I'm surprised to see so many flowers. The crown is totally covered by these flowers of this Elaeocarpus, and the leaves are undulate at the margin. But the leaves of all these trees, Teaceae, all the families, Myrtaceae, are very similar. And now Elaeocarpaceae, because Elaeocarpus is a genus of its own family, Elaeocarpaceae.